All right, there we go. Good evening. How's everyone doing tonight? Good, good. It's good to see all of you. We still have several filing in. Boy, I tell you what, after that great dinner we just had, my goodness, I might need to take a nap before we have service tonight. Would that be okay? Hey, promise me you won't go to sleep tonight, will you? That was a good dinner, wasn't it? Yeah. Anyway, yeah, absolutely. Well, I didn't cook it, so you'll have to say thanks to the cooks later. Say thanks to Stacy and Lauren. They took care of it tonight. Holly made those wonderful, what are they called? The cream puffs. Boy, those are good too. Anyway, well, all right. Well, just like last week, we're going to jump in there. I'm going to share from my heart again, and then hopefully I'm going to give you a little more time to maybe give me some of your ideas based on what we talk about tonight. We're on week 2 of what we call Pastor's Session for Wednesday nights. Last week we started this 4-week session talking about our message. In our church, we preach, teach, and practice the message of holiness. We talked about that last week, what that message is. And I shared how over the last few years, God has given us another way of looking at holiness. It's the understanding that you can be broken and holy at the same time. And that leads us to our definition of holiness. And by the way, does everybody have notes? The notes page? All right, good. If not, Doug's passing them out, so he'll get you a copy. But anyway, this is our definition of holiness. Holiness is what God does in us as we surrender our brokenness to Him. And we talked about that last week. We talked about the fact that holiness is what God does. And not only is it what God does, but it's what God does in our lives, in our hearts, right? And it's done as we surrender our brokenness to Him. And ultimately, the message of holiness is a message of transformation. We believe God changes lives. Amen, church? We believe that to the core of who we are, right? We believe that God changes lives. So when someone asks, can I really change? Or can my marriage be different? Or can I get free of whatever this thing is that's controlling me? Or can God do anything with my past? Can God still use me after I have failed so horribly or miserably? Our answer to those kind of questions is a resounding what? Yes, right. Because we believe that Jesus changes lives. So here's the question I want us to think about tonight. How do we help other people experience the life-changing power of Jesus? How do we do that? How do we participate in what God is doing in the lives of other people? Well, the answer, I think, is really simple. The answer is we follow the example of Jesus. We follow the example of Jesus. And that leads us to what I want to talk to all of us tonight about. It's our mission. Our mission. What is our mission? Last week we talked about our message. This week it's mission. What is our mission? Well, in Matthew chapter 28, Jesus gives us the Great Commission. You could call it Jesus' mission statement for the church. All right? Matthew 28, beginning in verse 18, he said this to his disciples. He said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make" what? Disciples. Right. Disciples where? Of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And then he gives us a promise. This is something about God's Word, and especially in the New Testament. Whenever there's a premise, thou shalt do this, some kind of encouragement for us to live a certain way or do a certain thing. Whenever there's a premise, it's always followed with a promise. And Jesus gives us a promise here. He says, "And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. And so let's look at what Jesus said there to his disciples here in the Great Commission. Let's look at that through the lens of what we talked about last week. If our message is holiness, then what is our mission? If our message is holiness, what is our mission? I think you could say that our mission is to go and do what Jesus did. And that's what he's talking about here when he says, therefore, go and do what Jesus did. So this evening, we're going to look at some of the things that Jesus did through his ministry on this earth. And here's what we're going to see as we kind of walk through this together. Jesus didn't change lives from a distance. Jesus didn't change lives from a distance. One thing I talk about in my book that I shared with you last week, I talk a lot about how God is always moving toward the broken. Psalm 34:18 says this, and it's kind of the heartbeat of this book that I've written. It says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He moves towards the broken, right? The problem is, we don't always know when someone is broken. That's the problem. We don't always know. And there's two reasons for that, right? The first reason is that people often hide their brokenness. In the book, I tell this story about something that happened when I was a young teenager. My stepdad, Roger, told a friend and I that we were not to go and be anywhere near the corrals where we were keeping the buffalo calves. Those of you who know me knew I grew up on a buffalo ranch. We had somewhere around 350 head of buffalo. And so we would wean the buffalo and we put them in this corral. And so we were told, me and a friend, we were told, don't go to the corral where the calves are. And as most teenage boys of those days, we didn't listen at all. So we're sitting there at this corral, kind of on top of the fence. It was one of those metal fences. We're at about 6 foot high. We're watching these calves. They're running the fence of this corral. And my buddy says, JJ, I dare you to ride one of the calves. Well, back in those days, you didn't say no when a friend dared you to do something. Plus, I had a reputation of being fearless, so I figured I better just do this thing. So I said, yep, I'm going to do it. And so I jumped down into the pen, and I jumped up on one of those calves and started riding it. Well, I was on the calf maybe 3 seconds before I landed on the ground. And when I came to, I realized that something on my body was hurting. Well, it was my hand. My hand had somehow gotten stepped on or crushed or something. I broke that finger right there. I broke it. Well, here's the thing. My dad explicitly told me that if I get caught near the calves there at the corral, I was going to be in serious trouble. So guess what I did? I did not tell him, and I did not tell my mom, okay? I just went on and lived with my broken finger, right? Well, here's the thing. Here I am, 2 years old. My finger is still numb. That finger right there. I can't feel that when I do that. I can't feel it. It's still numb. You know, it never healed right because I never dealt with it. I kept it hidden, right? And so I wrote that story in the book. The thing is, my parents to this day still don't know what I did. They're going to get a copy of the book. So I'd love to be there when they read that chapter. But anyway, to this day, that finger is numb. And see, the same principle applies to our lives. Hiding has a way of keeping our lives broken, right? And sometimes because of that, we don't really see someone's brokenness because they're hiding it. But sometimes the problem isn't that they're hiding their brokenness. Sometimes it's on us. Sometimes we don't see someone else's brokenness Because we're simply not looking. We're not looking, right? It's amazing to me how easy it is to go through life and never really notice what's happening in the lives of the people around us. But you know what? Jesus noticed. He noticed. And that's number one on your notes page if you're doing your fill-ins. Jesus noticed when someone was broken. He noticed it. He saw them. He knew what was happening in their hearts. He knew what was happening in their lives. Jesus noticed when someone was broken. And so, to illustrate this, we're going to go to Luke chapter 19, 1 through 7. If you want to turn there with me, or you can just read it off your notes page. It's in your notes page too. But it says this. It says, Jesus entered Jericho, beginning in verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man that was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. And when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up at him and said, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter. I want you to notice something here. Who began to mutter? All the people. I want you to think about that as we get into some of the things I'm thinking about this on this passage here. But all the people saw this and began to mutter. He has gone to be with the guest of a sinner. He's gone to be a guest of the sinner. Now, most of us know the rest of the story. It's one of those stories that most of us learned in Bible school growing up, right? But Jesus, he went to the home of Zacchaeus, and it changed his life. Zacchaeus' life. And I preached on this passage back around Easter. And there's an idea that I presented in that sermon. I want to present it again. It's another reason why I think he climbed that sycamore tree. Now, the Bible says that, he couldn't see over the crowd. He was short, and that was the reason why he went over there and climbed that sycamore tree. But I wondered myself, and maybe this is just me kind of reading into it a little bit, and I'll admit that, but it's also me kind of understanding human behavior as well. As I've been a pastor for over 30 years, I see how people act at times, right? And so I wonder if he was trying to keep a distance from all these other people. I'm talking about all these people who muttered, okay? These people who said, man, I can't believe Jesus is going over to his house, right? I'm wondering, at the very least, I'm wondering if at least he was grateful to be away from all those people, right? He was a tax collector, which would have made him very unpopular in that crowd. The people who were following Jesus, chasing after Jesus, they would not have liked Zacchaeus. I'm certain they didn't want to be around him. They didn't want to have anything to do with him, right? Because he was the guy who was collecting all their money. And so at the very least, I wonder if at the very least he was glad to get away from all those other people. And if you think about that, I sometimes also wonder if people intentionally keep their distance from others because they just don't want to be rejected. Do you see that sometimes? They don't want to be rejected. They don't want to feel like you're judging them. They don't want to feel, let down if they actually open up themselves and show you what's really going on inside. They don't want to be let down. All right? So the question is this. How can we show others that they don't have to go through what they're going through alone? Because we are living in a world right now where there are a lot of people who are walking through life alone. And it's crazy to me, and I'm sure I've talked to a lot of you guys about this. It's crazy to me that we live in a world now where we are more connected than we have ever been, and yet people feel so alone and isolated. It's crazy to me. People are begging for meaningful relationships, right? And so this leads us to the next fill-in. Jesus didn't just notice broken people, but this is number 2. Jesus entered the lives of broken people. Let's look at John chapter 4, beginning in verse 4, and we'll read through 9. John chapter 4, 4 through 9. Here it says, "Now he had gone through Samaria." That's a big deal, church. He's in Samaria. Jews didn't usually travel in Samaria. Well, he had gone through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews did not associate with the Samaritans. This is another one of those passages I've preached on in the last couple of years. I can't remember when I shared from this passage, but it's another one of those very important passages, very important stories in the Bible, right? I talk about this story in the last chapter of my book, too. To me, when you start digging into the different things that are happening, when you really paint a scene of what's going on and you kind of dig into this, it's an incredibly fascinating story, right? But the one thing that stands out to me above anything else in the story is how Luke makes a point. How John makes a point. John wrote this. John makes a point to say that it was about noon. I think he was intentional about giving us that little bit of information. It was about noon, right? The reason I think John tells us that is because this would have been the hottest part of the day. I think she chose to go to the well at noon because she knew there would not be anybody else there. She went there because she wanted to be alone. Most people in that culture, they would go in the morning when it was cool. And women never went to the well alone. They would always travel to the well in groups. But she was alone, right? And I think in her situation, I think it's because she wanted to keep her distance from other people. But I want you to think about something. And I wish, I tell you, I could preach a whole series on this thing, okay? There's a lot going on here. I'm not going to give you, I'm just hitting the tip of the iceberg on this one tonight, okay? But I want you to think about something that I think people really miss this when they're reading the story. Jesus asked her for a drink, right? She never gave him a drink. Think about that. And there's a reason for that. It's because of these barriers that stood between them. He was a man. She was a woman. He was Jewish. She was Samaritan. But there's something else here too. Jesus had nothing to draw water with. She did. He couldn't draw water. He had nothing to draw it with. Right? But she did. So when Jesus asks her for a drink, he's asking this Samaritan woman to share what she had with a Jewish man. And that's why she says, wait a minute, you're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink, right? And in that moment, just the opening of the story, okay, he's showing her a couple of things that he wanted her to know. The first thing he's showing her is that he's willing to cross any barrier that he needs to cross to have a relationship with this woman, all right? That he wanted to be her friend, all right? And he's going to do whatever he needed to do to build that relationship. And the second thing that he's wanting her to know, he's wanting to know that she mattered, She mattered. You know, the people who are out in our world right now, they need to know they matter. Their lives matter, right? And when we enter into their life, like Jesus entered into her life, you know, we are showing them that they matter, and we value them, and they're important to us. That is so important that we're communicating that to the people who come into our doors, the people who we meet out in the community, right? You know, especially in the church. Now, listen to me very carefully. When it comes to what we communicate to the people who come in, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, we have to communicate, you're not a project, you are a person. Too many people keep their distance from the church because they think the church is going to make them their next project. They are not a project. They are people. And we need to treat them that way, right? And we need to communicate to them. Your story matters. Your pain matters. You matter, right? And there's so much more I can say on this one, but I got to keep going. The next one's this. And that leads us to the next thing Jesus did. Number 3, Jesus ate with broken people. He ate with broken people. And this one's pretty cool if you ask me. It begins in Matthew chapter 9, verse 9. It says this. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Again, this is another one of those passages where there's a lot to it. I'm trying to paint a big picture here, so I'm kind of limiting what I'm saying on each one of these passages. But the one thing I want to point out with this one, okay, is that when you read through the Gospels, you notice that Jesus spent a lot of time around tables, sharing meals. Do a study on that. It is fascinating when you start looking at how many times Jesus is sitting at a table sharing a meal with someone else, right? And I tell you what, this is the reason why I am a fan of church meals and potlucks. The other reason is because our church really knows how to cook. We have some good cooks in our church. If you were at the potluck this last Sunday, you would know how good cooks our church is. We have a lot of good people that can cook really good meals. And the only problem I have with those meals is I always eat too much, especially on a night like tonight. But anyway, see, there's something significant about some of the people Jesus shared a meal with. He ate with people that the religious leaders didn't want to eat with. And he does that over and over and over again. He goes to homes and he eats food with people that the religious leaders of that day didn't want to eat with. And while he's eating with them, he's listening to their stories, and he's building a relationship with them. And look at what he says to the Pharisees who didn't like what he did. He said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. And that really should resonate with us. Who we're spending time with, and who we're doing life with, and who we're reaching out to, and who we're inviting into our homes, and who we're sitting down and having a meal with, right? And this leads us to our last fill-in. It's number 4. Jesus responded to people's brokenness. Jesus responded to people's brokenness. This one's in John chapter 11. All right, in John 11, Jesus is told that his good friend Lazarus was sick. By the time Jesus got to the home of Lazarus, Lazarus had died. He was dead. And so look at John 11, beginning in verse 32. It says this. It says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was, now get the scene, Jesus is coming, and Mary and Martha and Lazarus live together. And so he's coming to the home, Mary spotting him from a distance, and then she runs out to him. And it says, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her were also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And then now you have the shortest verse in Scripture right here. It says, Jesus what? He wept. He wept. Now here's the question though. Why did Jesus weep? Why did he weep? Think about this. Jesus knew what he was about to do. He knew as soon as they showed where Lazarus was at, that he was going to speak life into Lazarus, and Lazarus was going to rise from the grave. He knew what was going to happen. But he still wept. Why is that, right? It's because he was still moved by their pain. The people around him, they were weeping. And so what did he do? He wept with them. And I think that's very important for us to understand. He knew what he was going to do. He knew that Lazarus was going to live. And yet he's still moved by their pain. And so he identifies with that. And he weeps with them. And this isn't the only time that Jesus was moved. His heart was stirred. He was moved so many times in Scripture. I mean, over and over in the Gospels. He would see someone living with brokenness, and it would stir his heart. It would move him with compassion. In fact, that's a word study you could do. Just study how many times it says in the Bible Jesus was moved with compassion. It says that over and over again. Jesus was moved with compassion, right? All over the Gospels, you know. And I'll just give you a couple of examples, like when he goes to the widow of Nain, right? It's in Luke 7. She loses her son, right? And he goes to see her. And Scripture says that his heart went out to her. He was moved by the predicament that she was in. His heart went out to her. Again, knowing what was going to happen, his heart was still moved by her brokenness, by what she was going through, right? In Matthew chapter 9, Jesus saw the crowds, and it says that he had compassion on them. And it tells us the reason why he had compassion on it is because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd, right? And then you get to Mark chapter 1. There's this man. He comes to Jesus, you know, right out of the gate there in Mark. And Mark jumps right into Jesus' ministry. And Jesus sees this man with leprosy, and it says he was moved with compassion. And he reached out, and he did the unthinkable. You know, back in those days, if you touched somebody with leprosy, you were doomed. And so people stayed away from people who had leprosy. They would keep their distance. But Jesus, he walked right up to the man. He touched him. He touched him because he was moved by his predicament, right? And he healed the man. He healed the man. And here's what I find interesting. And again, this is another study you can do and on your own time. But many times when Jesus went to someone in their time of brokenness, many times the person wouldn't ask Jesus to do anything for them. There were a lot of times in Scripture where Jesus just did it, even though they didn't ask him to. He still touched them. He was moved by their situation. He touched them, or he healed them, or he spoke life into them. And so we We don't always have to be asked to help someone or to step in their lives and show them a little bit of love and compassion, right? And so here's what I want to do. I want you to look at this closely. I hope everyone has their notes page, and I hope you filled them in, because I want you to look at this really closely. I was very intentional about how I mapped this out this time, all right? Jesus noticed when someone was broken. Jesus entered the lives of broken people. Jesus ate with broken people, and Jesus responded to people's brokenness. Now look at the first letter of each of those words. What do they spell? Noticed, entered, ate, and responded. Near. Near. I was intentional about putting that together tonight. Jesus got near. Jesus got near. And so let's tie this into our mission here at Faynaz Church. Our mission that we've had, Larry, how long have we, what year was it when we adopted a mission statement? Our mission is to connect people to the living, loving, life-changing God. Because that was in your ministry, wasn't it? Way, way back when. Okay, so it had to have been at least 50 years ago. Yes, okay. Yeah. Huh? 25 years ago, you sat down with the church and the leaders, and you guys mapped out, the church mapped out a mission statement. And it was so good, Larry, that when I came, I didn't want to change it. Isn't that amazing? Because it is a good mission statement. We are here to connect people to the living, loving, and life-changing God. We've been that for years. That's been who we are. It's been what we are striving for in our church. It is our mission to connect people to the living, loving, and life-changing God. And this is where I'm going with this, okay? I want you to really think about this. If we want to connect people to Jesus, we have to get near to people. We have to get near them. All right? What that means is this. Last week, I talked about communicating our message. You don't have to be near someone to communicate your message, especially these days. You can communicate your message from a distance, right? But here's the thing. We can't fulfill our mission from a distance. We can't do what we feel like we're called to do as a people, connecting people to the living, loving, life-changing God. We cannot do that from a distance. So the question, and I want to just process this with you because I've got a few ideas that I want to bring to the table tonight, and I want to hear your ideas too. You know, it's about proximity. It's about stepping into someone's life. It's about building relationship with people. That's how we connect them to the living, loving, and life-changing God. It's not only seeing it live through us, but also helping them along the way so they can experience the life transformation we've experienced, right? And so the question is, how do we do that? How do we get near? How do we get near? I'm going to give you a few things we're doing already, and then I want to hear some of your thoughts. Ooh, I did good tonight. I gave you at least 20 minutes this time. I gave you about 5 last week. I'm giving you about 20 minutes tonight. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to share a couple of things, and then I want to hear your thoughts and ideas. The first one's this. Church fellowship dinners. Did you remember I was talking about how Jesus ate with people? All right. Well, maybe we should take our cues. I mean, that was something important to him. It's something that should be important to us. And I tell you, I know our people, we all enjoyed eating, right? Do y'all like to eat? You know I like to eat, right? Like our Wednesday dinners, you think, well, okay, that's just some way that we're trying to make it a little more convenient for people to get here. And that's part of it. But church, I'll tell you, I had conversations tonight with people while we're sitting there eating that I wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. And that happens every Wednesday night. You're able to sit down and connect with people. And what I love about Wednesday nights is the people who come on Wednesday nights, it's our core group. They are the people that are in the trenches together doing this thing so that we can carry on our mission. And so if you're here on a Wednesday night, you're all in most of the time. You're all in. And so that's why you're here, you know. And so I love Wednesday nights because I get to connect with that core group of people, and I can share from my heart, and everybody asks, how you doing, Pastor? And I can tell you that I'm having a bad week, and okay, what can we do to help? Or I can tell you things are going great, and you know, celebrate with me, and you do that with each other too. So it's incredibly valuable for us, right? And I enjoy the food, and I know you enjoy the food, and I enjoy the fellowship, and I know you enjoy the fellowship. But every time we sit down and we eat together, it gives us an opportunity to connect. We had a potluck last Sunday. We have a spaghetti dinner coming up. It's a fundraiser for our ladies group that's getting ready to go on this big ladies retreat coming up at the end of September. We have more ladies signed up for that retreat than we've ever had in the past, I believe. I mean, we're up to like 100 ladies. It's crazy. No, I'm thinking about canceling church that day because y'all are leaving, and there's going to be like 10 of us left. It's crazy. But anyway, there's a bunch of ladies going on this retreat, right? But they're trying to cover some of the costs of that, and so they're having this fundraiser. So yeah, we're meeting a need. We're trying to raise some money for our ladies, but we're going to get to sit down and talk and connect. And I saw that last Sunday. You know, people were sitting at the table, sharing a meal, enjoying some time together, sharing the stories, sharing our lives. You know, that's what the church is supposed to be like, church. We are called to be together and do life together, and know each other, know our stories, know what's going on, and be willing and ready to help people when those opportunities arise, right? I don't want us to miss the significance of what happens when our church family sits down and eats together. And it's really easy for us because we're good at it, right? And so it's important, right? We're not just sharing food, we're sharing life. We're learning names. We're hearing stories. We're building relationships. We're getting near, right? And so that's the first one. Second one is this, small groups. This last couple of weeks, we just started a Sunday school class for young adults, and we've got some single young adults in there, and these are young adults that have pretty much started in life. We're not talking about our college age group. We're talking about 24, 25 on up. It's crazy how many young adults are coming to that Sunday school class. I mean, that class has about 15 people that have just started. And this is the coolest thing is most of the people that are going to that Sunday school class, they weren't coming to Sunday school before. They were just coming to church. And can I tell you how that started? There was a couple in our church, a young couple has 2 children, little children. And they came up to me about a month and a half, 2 months ago. They said, Pastor, we want to take the next step. I think I was preaching on something like that on Sunday morning. They said, we want to take the next step in our walk with Jesus. And there's another couple in our church that I think they're at that same place too. Would it be okay if our 2 couples, work together and we started a Sunday school class? Well, one of our pastors in training just happened to not have really a place to serve at that time, and so Jesse, and I said to Jesse, he's getting ready to get his local license, and it would give him an opportunity to start serving and getting involved. So I went to Jesse. I said, Jesse, would you help teach that class? And so he said, yeah, I'm in, and him and Lisa, and they're teaching that class. And they went in there the other day. They painted the class. They decorated. They got it all set up. And now it's just full of people. I was telling them, I said, man, if you guys keep growing, I have to give you the sanctuary or something. That's so cool to me. That is so cool. But here's the thing. Here's what's really cool. And again, this is our A team here. So I'm trying to give you guys some insight and some things going on that you probably don't normally hear about. These people, a lot of them, now there's some singles in that class, but a lot of them are bringing their kids. Do you know that our kids ministry for Sunday school just exploded? Because all these kids that were coming to church, it's around 20, 25 kids that are coming to church during church. Now they're all coming to Sunday school. We are having to figure out structures and ways of doing Sunday school because we've got all these new kids coming to Sunday school whose parents are coming to that class. And so now we just grew our Sunday school by about 40 people. It's just crazy to me, right? But see, the thing is that small groups are so important. And so anytime we have an opportunity to start a small group, we need to try to figure out how to do it. And I get that there's things that we need to consider when we're putting those groups together, and I'm with you on that. But still, small groups are so important to the church. Mike and Kayla are getting ready to, you started last week. They started teaching our teen class. We've got college-age kids that are coming, and college-age kids, pray for those kids because they're at a weird stage of life. They're just trying to figure out things, and so you'll get a half a dozen coming here one Sunday, and the next Sunday you'll have 2 that comes. They're trying out to other churches and everything, going with their friends. I love that. Just go to church, kids. That's all I want, right? And so we're praying for all these college kids. But what you don't know probably is that about 8 of them every Wednesday night get together at 7:30 because, see, Spencer's leading them, but he has a teen group at 6:30, and so he meets with the college age at 7:30. And so what you'll see is when we're filing out of here, all the college kids are starting to show up, right? Because they're coming to that group. So it's small groups. It's so important. That small group, those college age kids, we're going to have them over to the house here in a couple days to just play games and eat snacks and do things together. And it's because small groups are important. And when I'm with them at our home, we're saying, hey, our home is open to you. We're here for you. We want to know you. We want to step into your life. We want to get near. Right? It's so good to have small groups, right? And another thing too, especially on Sunday morning when we have about 150 people in the building, give or take, it is hard to really get to know people in that setting. It's just hard. It's just so hard. Now, we do a pretty good job of that in our church. We get out about 11:45 unless the pastor goes long. And then we get out about noon, and if he gets really long, everybody's asleep by 12:05. But so we get out. But here's the thing: is I am literally kicking people out at 1 o'clock sometimes. It's go home, guys. Come on. I've got things to do, and and then people are still hanging around talking. Hey, I love that. I think that's the sign of a healthy, growing church. When you got kids running around the building, when you have people sitting, hanging out, talking. I know I did a bad job preaching that Sunday when everybody goes ahead and bugs out right after church. It's like, what did I say? They're all mad at me and they went ahead and left. But that doesn't ever happen hardly. But the thing is those connections are important. But they happen so well in small group. Sunday school, homes, around the dinner table, out to lunch, all that's so important. And this leads me to the next thing. And this is something we haven't organized yet, but it sort of kind of organically happens in our church. But I keep wondering if this is one that we need to be a little more intentional about, okay? It's in-home fellowship. I remember a day when people open their homes a little bit more than what I see now. I'm not coming down on anybody or saying that we're all, doing wrong or anything. I'm just saying it's just an observation. Back in the day, it was not uncommon for me to be, as a pastor, 30 years ago, I'd be in somebody else's house, 2 or 3 times a week because people open their homes all the time. And they would have you over and they would eat meals together and they would do things together. And the thing about it is, and there's 2 things going against us, church, and this is what's been on my mind. There was a time when we had these Sunday night services. I'm not saying we should go back to that, okay? That's not the case I'm going to make. But here's the thing is when we took away Sunday night services, it took an opportunity away for people to bring their friends to service, and then most of the time after Sunday night services, people would go out to eat. That was just kind of how you did it. You came to church, You brought your friends, and then you went out to eat, right? And that's how you got them here, too. You said, hey, we're going to go out to Brahms afterwards, and nobody can say no to Brahms. And so they would bring them, and they'd go to Brahms or something. Well, we don't do that anymore, right? And the thing is where do you invite your friends into community? Because it's awful scary. It's awful scary to come into a church, especially the size of ours, for the first time, not really knowing anybody. And so where do we invite them? Where's that first step into community, right? And the best place for that to happen is somebody saying to a few friends, hey, we're going to have a little fellowship thing over at our house. Grab some neighbors, grab some friends, say, come on over, we're going to eat together, and we're just going to get to know each other. We're just going to do life. We're going to have some time together. And it happens a little organically. I've been wondering if we should structure that a little bit just to be a little more intentional about that. I don't know. Maybe you can give me some of your ideas. But it's something that I think really does some good when we're able to do that. All right. So I love that. I love when we get into a room and you're laughing and you're having a good time, and then you're sharing your life with each other, right? So those are a few ways we're doing what I'm talking about when it comes to connecting, and I'm talking about proximity. I'm talking about getting near to people. Just a few things. There's some other things that we're already doing in our church, but those are what I think are the most important ones that we're doing. But the question I have, we've got about, hey, I did good. I gave you about 15 minutes. The question is, what else could we do? All right, what are some ways we can... Let me put it this way. How can we create more opportunities for relationship to happen, right? How can we get outside these walls and get near to people who aren't here? Because really, the ministry of this church is not just inside this building. If we could take this building and just lower all the walls and just kind of see out into our community, I would tell you that that's where our ministry is. That's where we need to be, out in our community, right? So how do we do that? How do we connect better? How do we get near, right? Okay, any ideas? Any ideas that you have? And I'm not good at hearing, so I'm going to try the best I can, but I might have to ask you to speak up a little or repeat yourself. So forgive me if I have to do that. All right, any ideas? Yeah, Nadine. Far out. Okay. Nadine's got a crazy idea, but there's no idea that's a bad idea. Hey, I love throwing spaghetti up on the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Me especially. Yeah. Ice cream socials, outdoor theaters, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember his name now, but I have 4 discs of this man that has
Mm-hmm.
put together things like I'm sorry, I cannot
That's okay.
remember names.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm horrible with that too.
Interesting videos,
Okay.
and people could have ice cream and watch
Mm-hmm.
this video.
Yeah. Yeah, video night, ice cream. Yeah, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we had actually talked about that, but anytime we do those events, and that was the one thing I was thinking about when I didn't put it on the paper, was some of our events. Like, we've got our fall festival coming up. We're going to go, hopefully, we haven't talked to the Gwens yet, if they'll let us come up again. I don't know. After the mess we made at their place last year, they may not want us to come back. But at any rate, we go up on the mountain and people come. And somebody asked us, they said, why is it that you are doing that and not the big fall festival that we have? We used to have a big fall festival here. And we'd have, 400, 500, 600 people come. And it was all hands on deck. We'd have about 100 people in our church helping, and we had games and all things. In the last couple of years we did that. What people didn't know is there was some safety issues happening. We had people coming in that were threatening other people, and it was becoming pretty crazy. And Pastor Elizabeth and I sat down, after the last one, and we had the same thing with the Easter egg hunt too. I don't know if you knew that we had a big fight. We almost had to call the police at the last Easter egg hunt we had. So it's weird how our world is getting. But what Elizabeth and I started thinking is, you have all these people. Our Easter egg hunt, the last time we had an Easter egg hunt, we had about 1,500 people come out. It was a big deal. The problem is we didn't get to know any of them, right? We didn't get to know any of them, and I remember people would leave, they'd complain and everything, and so that was a struggle. And so how did we do that better? We kind of tossed around different ideas, but then we had the thing up at the Gwynns, and I said, hey, everybody, bring your friend to that, right? And people started bringing friends, and some families came. And they stuck with us. A few families. Now, a couple of them have left since then, but at least we had a chance to get to know them, okay? And we got to build relationships. And the last couple of times we've done that thing up at the Gwynn farm, and people have come and got to know people. It's actually been kind of a success because it's a lower key thing, and then most of our people are there. We're just getting to know people. We kind of liked that. I'm not saying there's no value in doing the other things. Like the big healthcare fair. I mean, yeah, we didn't have as many people as we'd hoped to come, but the people that were here, we got to build relationships. I sat down and ate with a couple, and we had a hot dog together, and they've been coming to Wednesday night, and Bree and Dimitri. Is it Dimitri or Dimitra? Or Dimitric, yeah, I always pronounce that right. But, they've been coming to Wednesday night because we got to build a relationship. We just got to, and we figured out we were neighbors, and now we're just kind of getting to know them, and it's fun, and I hope you don't mind. I just put you on the spot, but anyway, if you mind, you can kick me later. But anyway, Bobby, you were next. Did you have something? Jonah? Oh, that's right. Yeah. The last one out the park. Thank you. Yeah, the last one out at the park. Yeah, the last Easter egg hunt we had here was great. Nobody got in a fight when we had our Easter egg hunt in the building. Okay, yeah. We all did fine with that one. But we had a lot of families that came to church that Sunday that probably wouldn't have had we had it out at the park. So, yeah, Heather. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's something else that I've been thinking about is I wish there was some kind of community that we could tap into. Adriana's church up in Olathe, they are in downtown Olathe, and so they opened a center in their church for helping people to get on their feet. And so it's not just giving them handouts, but actually taking them through classes and doing things to help them to do better, and maybe get housing. And so they've connected with the city on all that. And it is a great, vital ministry. People are getting baptized, and life is changing. And they have classes for cooking and things like that. And I think it's an incredible thing. It's just, I don't know how to connect to that. But maybe there is some group that we can connect to and kind of minister to. There's the church I used to pastor in Temple, Texas, many moons ago. When I was there, we started a ministry at a transitional housing for men, they baptize on average probably 2 a week of these men that come through that transitional housing. They get in there, they get saved, and start coming to church. It's a pretty phenomenal thing. But it's because they've partnered with another organization, and I don't know. Maybe there's something that's suited for us. I don't know. We have to think about that. Seven Helm, yeah. Bobby? We actually did that one time. Orrin, did you teach? No, you taught great Graveshare. Heather taught it. Yeah, Heather taught Financial Peace Union, and we had most of just our people that came. We had I think one family that were from another church that came, but they were actually attending another church, which is great. I mean, it went really well, and our people really enjoyed that. But yeah, those are good ideas. Any other idea? Yeah. Okay. I like crazy ideas. We could what? Oh, you mean that's a way to connect, is talk to your neighbor? Yeah. Okay. Wait, let's do one. Yeah, not until it gets a little cooler, but yeah, we'll grab our golf cart and go over through the neighborhood. And you know what? That was cool though, because when we did that, I met a family out here in the neighborhood, and this gal called me. I called her. She put on that. We're connected to the Facebook page for our community, Rolling Hills Facebook page, and this gal that she teaches skating, roller skating. She needed a place to do a roller skate night, and so I called her up. Said, "Yeah, come over here and do it here." And anyway, so this family that I met when we were out here praying and passing out flyers and stuff, they came to that skate night, and so I got another chance to develop a relationship with them. But too bad I can't remember their names. But anyway, I'm bad about that. But yeah, Harry, I love that you guys have great ideas.
I remember back years, small group meeting, cottage prayer meeting, 6 or 8 people get together and have a short devotional, prayer,
Yep.
and maybe a short dessert. But it wouldn't take 30, 45 minutes of people's time. Sometimes it was longer, sometimes it just in and out.
Yeah.
But it would produce results.
Yeah, it's good. I think, yeah, go ahead. Right. Yeah, bring them to your home and have dinner, like what we're talking about, yeah.